we have to engage in what I call manly activities. People will say, well, what's a manly activity? We all know what they are. They're physical in nature. They're typically competitive in nature. They typically involve loud noises, big explosions, and, interesting smells. That's what a manly activity is. So what does that look like? Well, jujitsu is a great one. It could be going to the gun range and learning how to shoot. It could be a pickup game of basketball this weekend, or maybe you're going to decide to participate in a Spartan race, or just lifting, or CrossFit, or any number of things that you know you should be doing. Gentlemen, do not be a lone wolf. I know that in today's age, it is so tempting to go at life alone, to think that you have it all figured out. Maybe even there's a little bit of jadedness from being burned in the past, or having friends and brothers who weren't reliable. But I'll tell you what, being a lone wolf, thinking that you can do it on your own, is a recipe for disaster. It works fine and great until it doesn't. And then when something goes wrong, whether it's a medical diagnosis, a divorce, a loss of a job, whatever it might be, then we realize that, man, we should have been building out our band of brothers this entire time. But because we let our ego and our pride get in the way, we find ourselves in a position that isn't favorable. So many men are alone and sad and lonely. They don't have anyone to turn to. They don't have anybody to bounce ideas off. They don't have anybody to network. They're lacking on professional networking opportunities. They're lacking meaningful connection. They're lacking the conversations that we as men should and need to have. And I think the biggest culprit is this idea that you can just do it alone. And anytime I've heard somebody say something about being proud of being a lone wolf, it usually is coming from a position of ego and arrogance and pride. You can hear it in their voice. I don't need anybody. I've got this figured out. I can do it all on my own. Some of that is pride, and some of it is just being wounded and not being able to heal. At times we take things personal. We believe that just because somebody had done something to us, then all people are like that. And then what we end up doing is isolating. And isolating, as I said earlier, is clearly a recipe for disaster. I don't think as I'm sharing this with you guys that this is new information, but it can be challenging and it can be difficult and it takes effort and work. And sometimes maybe it's just laziness. We're so inundated with work and family life and activities, and maybe you have some church callings, or you want to be a good member of your community, and all these things come up, and then you realize, man, I know I need to spend time with other good high caliber men, but I'm so busy, I just don't have the time. And I can certainly understand that more so than I can being proud of just doing it alone. Now, we use that lone wolf idea. Even the phrase itself, when you think about it, sounds really cool. Like, I don't need anybody. And the movies and entertainment perpetuate this idea. Guys like Jason Bourne and James Bond and the Marlboro Man are all notorious for being loners, for doing it on their own, for not working well with others. And while it works really, really well on TV and the movies, it does not work in real life. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share with you 5 things that you can do to ensure that you are working to build a band of brothers, that you're working to foster connections and networking opportunities, personal connections, professional opportunities that might come up if you stop doing life alone. So let's just jump right into it. Number 1 is we have to engage in what I call manly activities. And people will say, well, what's a manly activity? We all know what they are. They're physical in nature. They're typically competitive in nature. They typically involve loud noises, big explosions, and interesting smells. So that's what a manly activity is. So what does that look like? Well, jujitsu is a great one, right? You guys are competing. You're working against each other. You're actively trying to improve. You're trying to make another person better. He's trying to make you better. It could be going to the gun range and learning how to shoot. You get that new pistol, or you get a new rifle. You want to get some training and some exercise in. Get some guys and go to the shooting range. It could be a pickup game of basketball this weekend, or maybe you're going to decide to participate in a Spartan race and do something physically related that way, or just lifting, or CrossFit, or any number of things that you know you should be doing. So people often ask me, well, I'd love to build this group of men, and I'd love to have these connections, but I don't know where they are. I call BS on that. You do know where they are. The real question is whether or not you're going to go where they go. The hard part is going for the first time because you feel awkward and uncomfortable and out of place. And you are out of place, right? Because you're not part of the quote unquote tribe yet. So you just have to get over that. There's no easy way to do that other than to say, I'm going to make myself part of this tribe. And then over time, you end up learning the lingo and the customs and traditions within those organizations. You even start looking like those people. The way you dress, the way you move, your mannerisms all begin to connect with the tribe that you belong. So yes, you are going to be out of place and you are going to be uncomfortable and you are going to be the low man at the on the totem pole initially. But as you build up this camaraderie and this development with other men, you're going to find there's some real opportunities. The only other thing I would say with this when you're going to do these types of activities is go with the intention of meeting people. I have seen so many people go to awesome networking events, awesome opportunities to meet and mingle with other people, and they just do the activity and then they leave. They don't stick around. They don't ask questions. They don't introduce themselves to anybody. They don't try to learn about other people. They don't try to solve anybody's problems. They don't share their own problems. And so what ends up happening is you're surrounded by all of these people, and you might actually feel worse because you feel ostracized from the group. How many men have said things like, oh, I didn't feel welcome there, or I didn't feel like I belonged, or it was just a cult. You'll hear that one. Or these guys aren't interested in outsiders. One I often hear is, oh, it's the good old boys club. Now, some of that I think has some validity to it, but if we're using those phrases as excuses to sit in the corner, to sulk, to excuse ourselves from actually doing the work it takes to build up this band of brothers, then obviously that's what it is. It's just an excuse. It's nothing more than that. So if you're going to go do these activities where other men are congregating and working and pushing each other and challenging each other, then go with the intention of not just doing the activity, but go with the intention of meeting other people. I remember when I moved back to Southern Utah, I started training jujitsu again at the gym, the school that I started at. And within a couple of weeks, I had met a handful of guys, got a couple of different invites to some sanctioned MMA events here in Southern Utah. And I went and did those with the guys who invited me from the school. I didn't know those guys beforehand. And it just took a couple of weeks of me training with them, me rolling with them, me asking questions about who they are, what they're up to, activities, hobbies, interests, etc. And we'd do a little mat talk after our sessions where I'd ask people questions. That wasn't something they did. That was something that I tried to do myself because I realized how important it was to get to know these guys. And within a couple of weeks, now some of them are friends. I can call them up. I can text them. We can go do other things together. They'll invite me to the fights, et cetera, et cetera. Because I went with the intention of not just the activity, but the intention of meeting people, men specifically, that I could band with and I could connect with and I can have a relationship with. So that's the first thing, is engage in those manly activities. Number two, ask for help. This one is really, really difficult for men, but it's the single greatest connection strategy that I've ever used. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're new to an area and you want to find other good, high quality, motivated, ambitious, strong, righteous, maybe even men. And you decide, you know what? I'm going to go to the gym. Not only is it good for me, but I think this is where the men congregate. The real question is, they might be there, but how do you actually connect with them? One simple way is to ask for help. And it's really difficult for men because we think that when we ask for help, we're simultaneously saying, I'm not good enough. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm an idiot. And nobody ever thinks that. All right. If one of you came and you asked me for help and you said, hey, Ryan, I'm struggling with this thing with podcasting. What do you think? I would never in a million years say, what an idiot. I can't believe you don't already know this. Some guys might do that, but that's few and far between. When you go and you ask somebody for help, what you're actually doing is not undermining yourself. You're complimenting that person. So if you came to me and said, Ryan, I'm podcasting and I'm just getting started and this mic isn't great, what mic should I use? You're not saying anything negative about yourself. You're actually encouraging me. You're paying me a compliment. You believe that I'm an expert to some degree which is why you came to me. And that's how people of value look at it. When you approach somebody like that and you say, hey, I need help with this one thing, they're going to feel complimented. They're going to feel validated. And then they get to stroke their own ego a little bit and get to share their knowledge with you because you asked for it. So what might this look like at the gym, to go back to that scenario? You go to a new gym, and this might be, maybe you don't do this the first time, maybe you do it the third, fourth, fifth week or whatever you're there, but you see a guy and he looks fit. He looks like somebody who maybe is disciplined. He looks like somebody, for whatever reason, you feel like, man, maybe that's a guy worth knowing, right? We all see people like that. So you think to yourself, man, how can I connect with this guy? And it's hard because a lot of times, whoops, bumped my mic there. A lot of the times we get some societal pressure, mostly from other men who aren't willing to do this because they're afraid to approach as well. And they'll say it's gay, right? Oh, don't be gay, that's gay. Or you'll even feel, as I'm saying this, like, oh, it sounds like I'm going to go approach this guy for a date or to hit on him. So we have these outside societal and cultural pressures for men that says that if we go attempt to strike up a conversation with another guy, then we're being homos. And obviously we're not. So you need to get over that. So the way you might do this is, if I see a guy in the gym and I'm like, that guy looks like somebody I might want to get to know, is let's say I'm on the doing some bench and he happens to be on the bench next to me. I might say something as simple as, hey man, like, I've seen you here every single week or every single day for the last month or so. I'm Ryan. What's your name? And you don't need to make it awkward. Just reach out your hand. What's your name? Shake his hand. And that's it. Cool, man. See you tomorrow. And then tomorrow you can go from there. But how does this tie into asking for help? Well, one thing you might say is, hey, look, it seems like you've been doing this for a long time. I'm just getting started in strength training. I'm not really an expert on this, but I'm trying to improve. I'm actually trying to build up my chest and my tris and really bump up my numbers on the bench. Man, you seem like you've been doing this for a while. You got a good physique. Like, well, do you have any tips? Anything that you do that's helped you? Again, society's going to make you feel dumb about it. Like, oh, I can't believe you do that. You're going to feel dumb about it because you think you're showing signs of weakness, but that guy is not interpreting it that way. What he's saying is, oh, hell yeah. Like, I like talking about this stuff. Thank you for the compliment. You said I have a good physique. Like that's a compliment. And I'm happy to share and impart some of my wisdom with you. And you'll find out really quickly by the way that he answers that question or approaches it, if that's somebody worth even having an additional conversation with. Because frankly, it might not be. You know, if he's a dick about it or dismissive of it, it doesn't even mean he's a dick. He just might be working out and not interested in that. There's a lot of different things that take place here that would mean maybe not a follow-up on this particular conversation. Or maybe the way he shares, he just comes across and it rubs you wrong. No harm, no foul. He gives you some pointers. You just say thanks. And you guys both go on about your way and it wasn't weird or awkward or uncomfortable, and that's it. But if he gives you some pointers, take those pointers and then put it to work, put it into practice. And maybe in the next week or two, you come back to him and you're like, hey, John, like, man, you remember those pointers you gave me about where I sit or how I plant my feet on the floor or where my grip is going to be on the bar? I've been doing that. Man, it feels so much better. I feel like I'm getting a little stronger. And I did a PR last week, a 10-pound PR last week. So appreciate it, man. And start to nurture and develop and foster that conversation. I think when we have these types of conversations about building a band of brothers and finding other good men, we almost look at it like dating. Like, you see this attractive woman and you go decide to date her or ask her on a date, and then all of a sudden you're dating. It doesn't work like, it doesn't even work like that in the dating world. Not typically. You have to court this relationship the same way you would court in a relationship, a romantic relationship. So how do you do that? By just not pushing too hard, not having any weird expectations or trying to push things when it doesn't feel right. Is just let it happen organically with a little nudging, a little initiative on your part. So you get the PR, and then the next week you guys start talking about what other things go on outside of the gym, what happens in their life, what activities and hobbies and things like that they're interested in. And over time, maybe it's a month, 2, 3 months, all of a sudden, you guys are hitting each other up through text or through a call, and I'll get to my next strategy here in a second that's really going to help take this to the next level. Okay, so we'll continue to talk about this guy, John, that you met at the gym, which I know sounds a little weird. I get it. I understand. But stick with me on this. So let's say he gave you some pointers, you hit your PRs, you guys are having good conversations. He's got a wife, he's got a couple of kids, you're married, you've got a couple of kids, you guys enjoy some of the same things outside of the gym. And one thing you guys start talking about is the amazing golf courses in the area. And John's like, yeah, like I've always tried to golf. I've golfed a little, but I just don't go a lot. And you're somebody who happens to go quite often because you really enjoy it. So here's how you take this friendship to the next level. Again, I know the language I'm using might sound a little gayish, but please stick with me because I think you guys we're all capable of discerning what I mean here. So how do you take this friendship to the next level? Well, in this case, if you do invite him to go golfing, it actually might feel like you're asking him on a date. And that's weird. And he's going to think it's weird and you're going to feel weird and it's just not going to happen. So this is the gap that a lot of people are missing. You don't invite him on a date for you guys. You invite him to something that's already taking place. So Saturday night, I think there's actually some UFC fights this Saturday coming up. So you decide that, hey, I'm going to put together a UFC fight night. The wife's going to take the kids and they're going to go do their thing. We're going to get the guys together and we're going to have a good time with the men. We're going to get some snacks, get some food, watch the fights, and just enjoy, 5 or 10 of us over at the place tonight. So instead of inviting John on a date, invite him to the fights. Hey, John, I've got 3 or 4 buddies. I met these guys through my wife. They're my wife's husbands, and we all get along. We have a good time. We decided we're going to do fight nights. Man, like we've known each other a little bit, just seeing each other here, but would you be interested in coming over to the fights? See how you're still inviting him into your circle, but you're not actually asking him on a date? It's also non-threatening because he can say no, and it's no harm, no foul to you, and he's not going to feel bad about saying no, or he might even feel less threatened because it's a group of dudes. Like maybe he's interested in hanging out with some new guys as well. Same thing with golf. So if you guys both have an affinity for golf, like I mentioned earlier, you create a foursome for Saturday or Sunday morning, and you get 2 other guys. So it's you and 2 other guys, and you leave that last spot open. And when you see John at the gym, you're like, hey, John, you and I were talking about golf a couple of weeks ago. I've got 2 other buddies that are going golfing with me tomorrow. You should join us. We've got room for 1 more. Why don't you come join us? And leave that spot open. So when I'm trying to build out new connections that I want to have, I always leave 1 spot open for somebody that I can invite. I do this on hunts as well. So if I've got a hunt for, let's say, 8 people, then I'm going to fill 7, including myself, and I'm always going to leave that 8th spot open for somebody I don't know. Somebody that I might know briefly or just kind of be a loose connection with. Maybe it's a friend from a long time ago that I want to reignite that friendship. I'm going to leave that spot open for that individual so they can just come join us in whatever it is we're doing. It's a great way to start introducing yourselves. The other cool thing about it is you have other men who are going to be talking with John, and they're going to be building connections and relationships. And all of a sudden, you're going to have this big, robust, healthy network of men who are all working together on a friendly level, but also working together in business opportunities. I mean, I've had dozens and dozens of business opportunities present themselves because of friendships that I've created over the years. And not to mention, if it gets to the point where maybe you're having a hard time with something, or maybe one of your guys is having a hard time with something, now all of a sudden you have somebody to reach out to. Let's say you and your wife are on the rocks. You're having a bad week, or you guys are really frustrated with each other about who knows what. Man, wouldn't it be nice to just call up John and say, hey, John, look, man, like this week has been real shitty. Work was brutal. My wife and I are at each other's throats. Like, man, do you want to go like hit the shooting range, or I need to go into the gym. You want to go to the gym together? And you can go do those things, but actually have a meaningful conversation. I know for a lot of guys listening, this is going to sound so foreign because it is foreign for so many guys. Men don't have this. And there's all sorts of debates about why are men struggling? Why are men hurting? Why are men committing suicide 4 times the rate as women? I think this is part of it. It's not that we're not expressing our feelings enough and we're not in touch with our feminine side enough and that we don't know our emotions. It's not that. It's that we don't have other high quality men, high caliber men who are anxiously engaged, not only in their own purpose and mission, but they're excited, invested in our purpose and mission. I've got a handful of guys that probably even more, that I could call right now, and I could tell them that I'm excited about this new thing, and they would be just as excited as I am for it. Or alternatively, I could call them up and say, hey man, I'm really struggling with this thing, and I just wanted to talk with you about, maybe you have some input for me. And I've got a dozen guys I can do that with like that. If I called them in the middle of the night and I'm like, hey man, I'm struggling, I need you to come pick me up, or we need to get out of here, or whatever. Like, these are the guys who I could call because I've cultivated and fostered that relationship. But man, if you haven't done this, what ends up happening is when you're in a difficult spot, physically, mentally, emotionally, you don't have anybody to call. You're lonely, you're desperate, you're isolated, and then you end up stuffing your emotions. And then you end up making bad decisions. And then you end up becoming depressed, and then potentially end up becoming suicidal. So it's not that you're not doing the emotional work you need to be doing. It's that you don't have people to do it with. So I hope this is helping. The next thing here, guys, is that I wrote here is go first. Okay. When you're trying to build a powerful relationship with other men are just afraid of having real conversations as you are. So in the absence of somebody willing to make the first step, you have to do that. And so instead of posturing, this is what men will do, is posture, right? So we'll all be sitting around at the gym or the mat or on the golf course or wherever, and we're talking, and somebody says, hey man, how are you doing? And the posturing answer is, oh dude, things are great. My wife and I are doing good. The kids are healthy. Man, work has just been on fire. We're growing. And I call BS on that. There might be some elements that are true, but nobody's good at 100% of everything 100% of the time. But also, we believe as men that nobody wants to hear us complain. And while, yeah, sure, there's also a time and a place for you to actually have some real conversations about what you're struggling with. So that when I say go first, you're all sitting around talking and everybody's like, how you doing? How you doing? How you doing? Have some balls here, guys. And it takes courage. That when it comes to your turn to say the real thing, guys, work's been awesome. Firing on all cylinders, making a lot of money right now. But you know what? Like, I'm realizing, man, it's coming at the expense of the relationship with my wife. She's upset with me because I'm not as home as often. And even when I am home, I know I'm stressed and I'm taking it out on her and I'm taking it out on the kids. And even though I'm there, I'm not real present emotionally. I don't know. Have you guys ever run across that? Like, what did you do in those situations? So you're actually hitting on point number 2 there as well, as asking for help. They don't think less of you. They're really glad that you brought it up and they would love to give you advice. And then what it does is it unlocks permission. So now, guys, what you've done is you've silently, in a stealth sort of way, given them permission to do the same thing. Because what they're going to realize, even subconsciously, is, oh shit, if Ryan, a guy that I respect and admire, can share the struggles he has, and I didn't even know he was struggling that way, it's really good to see the humanity of him. Well, you know what? I'm actually struggling with this with my wife. We're not as intimate as I would like to be. We're intimate once a month, and I'd like to be intimate once a week or more. And so now another guy brings up that scenario, and another guy brings up a different scenario, and another guy talks about how his daughter is struggling at school because she's being bullied, and the other guy's like, I'm trying to grow my business and I can't get the damn thing launched off the ground. And all of a sudden, now we're having real conversations. I don't give a shit about the football game. I don't really care all that much about UFC, even though I might do a UFC fight. I enjoy the fights. It has nothing to do with my life at all. So I enjoy it for entertainment, but I'm not going to sit around and talk stats and brackets with everybody because I don't care. I don't care about the newest restaurant in town. That doesn't interest me. I don't care about these surface level conversations. I'll have them. I realize they're important to build up camaraderie, but I'm having those so I can start getting into the deeper, more meaningful conversations. What are you struggling with? What am I struggling with? What can I help you to do to grow your business? Where might we be able to start a business together? What activities, hobbies, and interests are you pursuing? Why is that important? What's your dreams? What's your goals? What's your desires? Here's mine. Those are the kind of guys that I want in my corner, because those are the kind of guys who I could call in a pinch. I can't call the guy that I talk about UFC stats with and just like empty my heart out and tell him all the things I'm struggling with, and I need some help from him, because we haven't built that kind of relationship yet. So point number 4 is to go first. It's just having the testicular fortitude to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to put them on the chopping block a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there. Now, you're not going to bare your soul. You're not going to talk about everything you ever did wrong and you feel guilty and shame in your life. You're not going to bawl like a little baby in front of these guys you barely even know, but you're going to say, you know what, guys, I'm struggling in this department, quite honestly. Any pointers? And then you're going to find out, like, are these guys who are interested in having those types of conversations, or are these the statistic guys? They can tell you every lineup, you know, for the Atlanta Braves for the past 25 years. Hey, good. Go have that conversation with other people who want to have that conversation. I'm looking for something different, and that's okay. But you're going to find out quickly who those are. And then the last point that I wrote here, guys, very important, is follow up. You've probably heard the phrase, the fortune is in the follow-up. This is true. If you're just making connections, kind of like sprinkling it everywhere, the shotgun approach, you're not really going to have these deep, meaningful, powerful band of brother type relationships. You're going to have these very surface level, very trivial, like nod and say hi, kind of the awkward, like, I don't know if we're supposed to talk or I'm just supposed to acknowledge you kind of relationship. You have to follow up. You have to be consistent. Even when you do go first, sometimes there's going to be a lot more hesitancy about them sharing. And so you have to keep bringing it up. And you might even ask, hey man, like, are you doing okay? Like, you seem off, you know, you've seemed off the last couple of weeks. Is everything good? Are you struggling with something at home or at work? Like, prod a little bit, follow up, give these guys an opportunity to do something that's not only going to serve you, but it's going to serve them as well. If you're at the gym and there's the guy, you know, you asked him for advice, he gave you advice, you guys have good conversations while you're at the gym. I had this happen actually just the other day. Loose acquaintance, somebody I knew from a long time ago. And, you know, we've talked a little bit here and there and had some conversations. Most of our conversations centered around the gym. And I went into the sauna the other day and he was in there and I was like, hey man, what's going on? He's like, no, not much. And he actually went first. He's like, I'm really struggling with this. And I'm not going to share any of that personal detail just because somebody might be listening that I wouldn't want to know that. But yeah, he said he was struggling. And so we had a great conversation about it. And nothing really came, like no groundbreaking answers came from our conversation, but it was good. And I don't know how we got talking about it, but I started talking about hunting. And he's like, oh man, I used to hunt. Like, I'd love to go hunting again. And I said, dude, you're welcome anytime. Here's 3 or 4 hunts that I have planned right now. And he's like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I'd love to do that. So we're going to go pig hunting next year in Texas. So, and that all came from using the same strategy. Now, maybe we go on a hunt once and that's it. Or maybe we become friends and his wife and my girlfriend, we all hang out. I don't know. I don't really have an expectation of that happening, but if it does, that's cool. And that's how you build out the guys in your corner, the guys who care about you, the guys you care about. And that's how you get outside of being a lone wolf. The only other thing I would say to this is it's work. You know, going through those 5 steps, engaging in these activities, asking for help when you can, inviting men along to other things that you have going on, going first and being humble, and then following up, that's a lot of effort. That's a lot of work. And if it's important to you, you'll do it. And if it's not, you won't. And you'll find all sorts of excuses as why there's no cool men in your area and why nobody's interested in self-development like you are. And everybody's more worried about dumb things than they are worried about improving their lives. I only say those things because that's what I used to tell myself. And it just wasn't true. I just had to come up with a better way to connect with men in my area and build out this band of brothers. And I'll tell you what, it's been, I won't say life-saving necessarily, but there's been some real moments of darkness in my life, even over the past couple of years, where if I didn't have good, high-quality men in my corner, I think I'd be in a completely different situation than I am right now. And I'm in a good situation. Things aren't always perfect. They're not always wonderful, But generally, I'm in a really good spot. And in large part, it's thanks to the men who are in my corner and the work that I've done to ensure that I have these guys in my corner. So, men, let's get over the lone wolf mentality. Let's put that away. To me, that's childish. That's immature. As men, for thousands and thousands of years, we've been banded together as tribes and gangs and villages and cultures and groups. It isn't different now, or at least it shouldn't be. We're more connected through these devices like our cell phones and computers and podcasting than we've ever been, and yet we're so disconnected from real face-to-face connection and interaction with other men and other people who could really do well for us and we could really do well for. I hope that serves you guys. If you have additional thoughts and questions and ideas, and if you have topics that you'd like me to address, hit me up, ryan@orderofman.com, or also feel free to ask me a question over on the gram. I'm at Ryan Mickler. I'm very active over there. So if you message me, I will get back with you. It might take me 2 to 3 days, but I will get back with you. And again, that's at Ryan Mickler over on Instagram. Outside of that, guys, please make sure you check out my friends and show sponsors over at Montana Knife Company. They are making American knives. They just yesterday released a collaboration with Steve Ranella from Meat Eater called the Flat Tail Knife. They're probably long sold out by now, but you can go over to their website, check out what other knives they have available. Hunting season is quickly approaching, especially as we get into the fall here a little bit. I'm very excited about. So if you want a good knife in the field or even in the kitchen, or their tactical knife, which is the War Goat, it's right over there sitting on my nightstand. That's their first tactical knife. You can check it out at montanaknifecompany.com and use the code Order of Man. All right, guys, that is my call to action for you. Until then, go out there, take action, do not be a lone wolf, and become the man you are meant to be.